Rated everyone. Hot Wheels Velocity X. Available on PlayStation 2, GameCube, PC, and Game Boy Advance.
That's right, today we are looking at Hot Wheels Velocity X, or if you're looking at the PS2 version like we are, Hot Wheels Velocity X Maximum Justice. The game was developed by now out of business Beyond Games and was published by THQ. It released on all platforms in late 2002. The game is essentially a cross between standard racing and fairly simple vehicle combat.
Nice.
Now, this week has been the first time I've actually played this game. I have played Hot Wheels games in the past. In fact, I describe myself as a fairly avid Hot Wheels enthusiast. I started out with Hot Wheels World Race when I was a kid, and I didn't really have much else except actually collecting the toy cars until Hot Wheels Unleashed, which I have rinsed and recently 100%ed.
What the hell? Oh my god!
And then with the recent announcement of Hot Wheels Unleashed 2, I thought what better time to look back in time at some of the other previous Hot Wheels games that we've had. Now, whilst there are multiplayer modes in this, racing, battling, so on and so forth, the bulk of the game actually features a story, and it's single player. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. The plot, essentially, to sum it up, there's a Hot Wheels car business owned by Dr. Peter Justice. He gets robbed, the Velocity X formula gets taken, and it's up to his 17-year-old son, Max Justice, to solve the mystery and retrieve the missing formula. Now, I'm going to go and assume that Velocity X is similar to that goofy-ass drug from the Flash TV show / comics, that Velocity 9 that Zoom takes to go faster.
You can't lock up the darkness.
Which is why they would want it back, because they want the cars to go faster. Also, what is it with the early 2000s and these bloody names? Max Justice. There's another character called Nitro Burn. Honestly. So in the main adventure / story mode, there are 14 missions. There's a variety of tasks in each mission. They're kind of very standard tasks though: destroy a couple of vehicles, collect this item, take this item to one place, race or battle like a specific boss, and most of this is under a time trial as well. It's very it is quite generic, but there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's interesting to note that there is a Game Boy Advance version as well. The story mode on that is slightly different, and a lot of the cars are also different, so realistically it's basically just a different game, so that's why we're not going to really talk about it today. Okay, so let's dive into the controls. The controls, they're fine, I suppose. The biggest issue is this game obviously wants to kind of be an arcade racer combat hybrid, but the controls and how the cars handle, it just doesn't quite fit the arcade tight racing style that Hot Wheels Unleashed has. Obviously that game came out 2 decades after this, so it's not quite a fair comparison, but my point still stands. Cornering at speeds is an absolute ball ache. You may as well just bounce off the wall. It's easier and quicker, so don't waste your time trying to maneuver properly. It ain't worth it, chief. And on that note of steering, trying to do the combat, as I'm sure you could have seen from the video, I know I'm not the greatest driver, so this isn't the best example, but when it came to close quarters combat in these tight areas, I was getting very frustrated with trying to turn and maneuver the car. Now, as this is a Hot Wheels game, obviously there's going to be stunts and crazy loops and all the zany things you come to love from Hot Wheels. And honestly, they're actually quite well implemented here, and they're a good time. There are limited ways you can control the car in the air to perform stunts to get points. And then on top of the stunts, we also have power-ups, which is mainly for combat, and they're also pretty crazy. You've got some basic ones, like some cannons, there's an armor repair one, because honestly, I found myself dying way more than I should have in this kid's Hot Wheels game. And then on my car, I used the barrel. It's like an explosive barrel launcher, which was pretty fucking sick. Now, if I were to summarize the controls of this game, it would pretty much just be...
I mean, it's alright, overrated as fuck.
The gameplay is, again, alright. I'm not too impressed by this game, however. I know this is a childhood classic for a lot of people, but I think because I don't have the nostalgia goggles on, I don't think I've enjoyed this one quite as much as I hoped I would. But it's not a bad game. Now we've discussed the gameplay and the controls a little bit, let's dive into the graphical and design side of things. Now, for the time, the graphics are actually amazing.
Are you sure about that?
Oh, no, not really, I'm just kidding, but they're okay, they're not bad. I find the car models to really not be that exciting, to be honest with you. They just seem very toned down to me. I'm not sure if I'm just being a little dramatic, but they just don't quite look like they're actually Hot Wheels. And obviously the cars themselves look like Hot Wheels cars, it's just the colouring and the way they kind of look, it doesn't quite work for me. When you actually view the cars from like the car selection screen, they do look really good, that's the thing, but when you put them in to the actual game, you're driving around, I'm a bit underwhelmed. Just a bit underwhelmed. Now, the levels themselves, they're nothing worth writing home about, but they were actually quite impressive for the time. They were quite big, expansive, open areas, and these areas you could explore them. There was a free roam mode as well, and even when you were just doing specific objectives within the story, there's still a lot of stuff to look at. Whether or not that stuff is pretty or nice to look at, that's really down to you. I don't think the levels look bad by any sense of the imagination, but I don't think they look that good either. They're just quite bland colour-wise to look at. Now, I don't particularly enjoy comparing games to other games in terms of graphics, but if we do look at other racing games that came out in 2002, this really wasn't the winner in terms of pleasing on the eyes, shall we say. Take a look at Auto Modelista here. Now, I do think that game was obviously more stylized because that was its main selling point, but I do think a bit more work could have gone into making the cars look better in Velocity X as well, specifically when you're actually driving them in the levels, because as I mentioned, from the menu they look pretty cool. Now, we've reached that point in the video where we now discuss secrets or fun little facts and things about the game which you may not know already.
Oh my god!
Whilst the gameplay that you've been seeing on screen has been from the PS2 version of the game, there are some cool things about the GameCube version that you might not know. The GameCube version is virtually identical to the PS2 version, except there's 3 cars that you have unlocked by default on PS2 that to unlock on the GameCube, you have to pair the Game Boy Advance version using the link cable for the GameCube to the GBA. These 3 cars are the Overboard 454, Attitude, and Twin Mill 2. Speaking of the Game Boy Advance version, there is a very strange developer message hidden in the game. It's a story, and I will read to you the first 2 paragraphs now. I like monkeys. The pet store was selling them for 5 cents a piece. I thought that odd since they were normally a couple thousand each. I decided not to look a gift horse in the mouth. I bought 200. I like monkeys. I took my 200 monkeys home. I have a big car. I let one drive. His name was Sigmund. He was in fact, none of them were really bright. They kept punching themselves in their genitals. I laughed. Then they punched my genitals. I stopped laughing. Now, apparently this was a message that was spread through emails and user blogs back in the 90s, but it was also in a couple of other games developed by Sapphire, who were responsible for the Game Boy port of Velocity X. If you want to read the whole of that captivating story about monkeys, I will attach the link in the description below so you can check that one out for yourself. Now, the Game Boy version did have cars that were exclusive to that game, but the main games also had cars that were removed before the game came out. For example, Slingshot was found in some pre-release images that were in magazines, but was not actually found in the game when it came out. The same could be said for Sweet 16 2, which was on the website of one of the game's creators, but again, not in the game at launch. Now, for one final bit of trivia before we wrap today's video up. The game itself actually came bundled with a first edition's 40-something, and the paint job had the THQ and Velocity X logos on it. Okay, so overall, I didn't dislike this game. I didn't think it was bad. It certainly isn't my favourite Hot Wheels game by any sense of the imagination, and I look forward to covering some of the other Hot Wheels games that I've missed in future. It's a really cool concept. The controls are a bit iffy. Gameplay wise it's a lot of fun, it could just use a bit of polish is all. So, thank you very much for watching, please don't forget to subscribe, tap the bell for notifications, smash the like button, all the cringe normal stuff, but please, because it does really help out and support me to continue in future. I will see you all in next week's video.
But me? I could do so much more! So much more! But this is what I get.